Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Erin Kopek, and I'm the Director of Marketing with Higher Level. And today you're joining myself and Carrie Burchill on our monthly HiNotes webinar program. Today, Carrie is going to talk to us all about simple strategies to build resilience, working with your team, and just to make everybody well-rounded and different strategies to use in 2021. Before we get started today, I would like to go over a few housekeeping things. You do have the ability to ask questions in the chat box. Everybody is muted for a better experience, but feel free if you have questions or comments. We love interaction, so feel free to do that. And then we could take your questions offline if we need to. But this webinar will last around 45 minutes, so plenty of time to get in some good information and get your questions answered today. So before we begin, I would like to introduce Carrie Burchill, and thank you for joining us today. So Carrie is a coach, facilitator, and a leader with over 20 years of growing others. Carrie's style stems from slowing leaders down to words on what they do that is working. Through a focus on what is working, Carrie helps leaders identify how they can incorporate more strategies daily that they know work. This strategy of growing the positive spurs, inspires, and stretches leaders to set the bar higher to surpass expectations. Carrie has had a diverse work experience in different industries and 3 different countries. Her wide breadth of experience offers insight into human behavior, out-of-the-box stories that inspire, entertain, lead, and creative thinking. Using inspirational and evidence-based strategies for growing leaders, Carrie uses time-tested methods to facilitate workshops, retreats, and keynote presentations. And I can definitely speak from experience. She works with our leadership team at Higher Level and does all those things and even more. So super to have you this morning, Carrie, and I pass it off to you.
Thanks, Erin. It's a pleasure to be here. And boy, I love my time with Higher Level. It's great to see that company growing so much. And I think it's just such a gesture on Higher Level's part that they offer these free webinars. So lovely to have everyone. Welcome. I'm going to dive in and share my screen with you. And Erin, chime in if there's any sort of hiccup around seeing this, okay?
Okay, great.
Awesome. Okay, so in our time, we're going to, displaying them backwards again, isn't it? Okay. We're going to talk through just a bit of my background. Erin did some high-level things, but I really want to give you a sense of where these concepts come from and sort of how the lived experience evolved into this way of thinking. Then we're going to talk about some #1 strategies for innovation and talk through concepts and then really apply it to some chat activities that I'm going to ask you to engage in. So without further ado, a little bit about me. We have a perfect dog. I would love to see if anybody else has a dog. Feel free to chime in what your dog's name is or what the kind is. What's important about this picture is we have only 1 couch in our house. Yeah, so you get a really clear sense of who owns the house in our world. This is Ladybug. We just call her Bug. We got her from a shelter. And my partner, we've been married for 27 years, and he's the best decision of my life. And about, gosh, maybe 20 years ago now, we were sitting in our kitchen and kind of feeling like we'd been fast-tracked in our careers. We didn't really want to stay that stable and sort of unchallenged. And so I applied for a teaching job in the Netherlands because I have a teaching background. And he was a chiropractor at the time and applied for med school. I did not get the job, to his chagrin. He really wanted to like deliver pizzas on some velo through Brussels, but he did get into med school. So we left our home in Calgary, Alberta, which is just above Montana there, above the pink stuff in Canada, and we went to the Caribbean. So this is a picture that I took with my phone when we were in the Caribbean, just a beautiful volcanic island named Dominica, and I was lucky to be principal of a private school there. From there, we went to New York City, where I taught in persistently dangerous schools, and it just still stuns me that the largest board in America actually labels schools that, and it had me starting to think, like, of course these kids are going to act rough. Like, some teachers were calling 911 during class change. I mean, it was a wild experience, a couple of years there. And structures drive behaviors, right? So the things that we put in place when you label someone persistently dangerous, we also had the title failing. Unsurprising that the kids and the behavior sort of rose to that. From there, we moved to Detroit, where I started coaching teachers in really diverse inner city tough schools. I remember one school sitting in there in these tiny like 1950s desk with the built-in wooden top. You know, some of these big high school kids just barely squeezing into those chairs. And on the window beside me was a boarded up window that had been broken. I mean, just like learning environments. Again, structures drive behaviors. And then we moved to Baltimore, where I worked on my PhD, taught for Johns Hopkins with similar kinds of coaches that or teachers that were really in dynamic, tough situations. And that kind of brings us to Southern Illinois, which is a beautiful landscape where, if you know anything about Illinois, the tectonic plates and glaciers kind of, not tectonic plates, the glaciers stop moving at Southern Illinois. And so it kind of creates this really nice plateau. We always keep our identity like we're not Chicago. It's actually a 5-hour drive south of Chicago. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about the real work. I'll give you that background just so you have a sense of my experiences and how they drive how I sort of see things and how we approach leadership. So whether you're in a formal leadership role or not, I really think that these strategies apply to you either way. So think about how you can leverage the role you play, and all of us have the potential of being a leader in that environment. So our pitch today is one strategy to build resilience and innovation. Been smiling and kind of reflecting. I was emceeing a conference in person right before COVID hit. And then of course we did the second conference, which was virtual. And then, you know, the conference facilitators reached out and said like, hey, Carrie, what are we going to do next year? What's the cutting edge stuff? You know, do you have the answers for us? And I kind of joked and said, like, none of us have cutting edge answers. Like, we're all in the middle of this pandemic trying to figure out what the heck is the best strategy. And so this is not new, but it is the leverage for us to figure out that new reality and how we find our rhythm. Very simply, trust. I love this picture because in the middle of trust, we see the word us. It takes an us group of people to build trust, and that trust fuels resilience and innovation. All right, so healthy teams very simply have a sense of trust beyond them. So they know that everybody has their back, they can rely on people. In other words, they have agreed upon norms, values, behaviors, beliefs, right? I value pitching in when my colleague needs help. We have a norm where I might look in on my colleague to see if I could help. I take initiative to help them. I believe that we should help each other. And my behavior is I actually do help people. So healthy teams are this way. Now we know that that's not often the case, right? Dynamic teams have competing norms, values, behaviors, beliefs. I get my story going about somebody in my head. I think that they're too busy to help me, so I won't ask for help. Or maybe someone's done something to sort of send me a mixed message, maybe didn't really interact with me in a good, safe way. So I get a story going and I say to my colleague, man, Aaron, can you believe so-and-so did that? And then Aaron and I are kind of in a circle on our outside watching for so-and-so to do that thing again. And we're now kind of doing our own norms where we talk behind people's back. Luckily, I've worked with Aaron enough to know that's not the case with her. But you get the idea, right? There's a bunch of competing things and perceptions and stories that we have about each other. And these team dynamics really break down trust. They're not overly helpful. So we create this sense of belonging that drives the trust and the team and kind of gets everybody in the circle, right? We need to spend time thinking through what are those norms, values, behaviors, beliefs, and we're going to talk through some strategies to do that. Without this sense of belonging and trust, we lose innovation. We lose the ability to respond to the dynamics of our current experience. So this is important stuff. So what are some reasons why we maybe have competing group dynamics? Maybe we're not on the same page, the trust isn't really there. Well, maybe I've got a sick parent and I'm working with them. I think of a colleague actually that I worked with recently in some of my coaching work. The colleague was saying that her mom recently had a knee surgery. So she spent 4 days working from home, which was really her mother's home, helping her mom at her mom's beck and call. And the colleague was saying, like, the day was sort of okay, but the night, oh my goodness, my mom, she needed help. She's crying out like, I'm so tired coming back to work, right? So that colleague if I wasn't sympathetic and sort of stay tuned with my colleagues, I may not know that this person's tired. And so maybe they're kind of looking lazy from my perspective. But we have a norm of checking in on each other. So I know what the real story is. And I'm now pitching in to help her with some of her work, right? Because I know about her family dynamic. But without understanding that, I might have a story about her. Maybe you have a story about your colleagues. Maybe you're going on holidays and you're just going to suspend everything and nobody has your back while you're gone. Maybe you're feeling sick, just not yourself. There's some change happening. Work is crazy. Finances are stressful. Maybe you were on furlough. You have colleagues who were on furlough. Or because of COVID, your job shifted and you're in a new role now. Or maybe you were even displaced and now you're working at a lower wage. Gosh, time crunch. We're asking more of people in less time. There's pressure, pets, traffic, just a million things that sort of get in the way of us showing up in the circle. And we have to find a way to help each other see, hey, you're doing things that are maybe outside of the circle. What's going on in your world? What's the spin look like that's taking you away from being in our circle? So typically what happens in the real world, right, is there's an issue and there's a fix. I'm going on holidays, can you cover it, right? There's some interpersonal dynamics that aren't fantastic, right? Aaron and Carrie keep talking behind your back. Well, you shouldn't do that. I'm just going to tell them not to do that anymore. There's issue fix, issue fix. There's some just doesn't get us anywhere when we're sort of slapping solutions on things. There's flat progress. And the risk of that is burnout, overwhelm, unhappiness, fatigue. You want to leave your job. It doesn't get any better. It's like Groundhog Day, the same thing over and over again. Not fun. And certainly not helpful when we think about being innovative. So what we do want to see is progressive progress. So I have an issue, maybe I'm worried about finances, someone slows me down and they help me think through how to do that. For example, different colleague just this week had the terrible situation of losing her furnace, was not working. And this person's, in an entry level kind of job, they're not making $1 million. I mean, furnaces are thousands. And obviously distracted. I mean, your dog's at home in a house that's like 50 odd degrees. This is right after we had that snowstorm last week. So she's in a spin. And I recognized it and just went to her and said, like, hey, you matter to me. Your self-care matters. Here are some ways that the company can support you financially. Here are some other resources in the community. And so we talked through it and we found a solution. Turns out that one of our energy companies in the area actually has a program where they give folks who are just strapped for some money entirely free furnaces. So not 2 days later, she looped back with me to say, oh, it's going to be delivered tomorrow. I didn't have to use the company resources where we help with some charity cases. Solution, right? Now, sure enough, that person's going to have some other issue that pops up because it's life and we want to help find those solutions. So when we do this and we help people slow down in the spin, we really find solutions that are sustainable, and that stuff helps us with progress and innovation. You with me? Okay, I don't see anybody asking chat questions yet, so as we go along through this, feel free to chime in and ask some questions. So 2 strategies to build trust and innovation. The first one is you got to find ways to have mileage together, and I'll explain what I mean by mileage in a minute. And the other thing is you need to validate in the circle behaviors. So these are 2 strategies that anybody can do in the organization. You don't have to be a formal leader. If you are a formal leader, then you're ideally positioned to do this. So let's talk through how we can implement both of these strategies. So the first strategy is around trust, which is consistency over time. I love this mathematical equation for this. So I fondly think of somebody that I work with in my consulting work, and he is chronically grumpy in the morning. Now, at first, I had a story going in my head, admittedly, about the person. I'm wondering if they're the right person in the role. I wonder if they're maybe negative. Maybe there needs to be potentially some discipline, like they're not what we want them to be. And then I slowed down to realize, I go to this company in the afternoon to do some work, and this person's like, hey, Carrie, how are ya? Chatty Cathy. In the morning, though, before 9:30, that's the turning point I noticed. Just don't even engage. And what's interesting about that story, even though this person's grumpy in the morning, I learned to trust them because they were consistently showing up the same way. Over time, I saw the person was just not good in the morning and totally different in the afternoon. And therefore, I can trust them because they're consistently giving me the same behavior over time. So we want to be able to consistently rely on people that are in that circle because we get the same stuff from them over time. I think of another team that I was working with doing some team coaching recently, learning a feedback structure to help each other sort of call out the stuff that's in the circle. And the person was saying, I don't think I can do this because I get in trouble when I give feedback. And we, after the training, sat down together and kind of talked through a recent experience she had where she just kind of exploded at her team and said, well, it doesn't have to be me all the time doing X. Everyone else could take a turn once in a while. And it exploded because she didn't give the feedback consistently. And then this explosion reaction really depleted the trust that people had for her on the team. So we need to get to a point where we consistently give people feedback when they're in the circle positively, when they're doing something that's maybe out of the circle. We're just consistently helping people show up in the circle. And we do that over time. It's going to build trust. So think about mileage showing up together consistently builds trust. So here are some ways to do mileage. You got to spend time together. I mean, it sounds kind of colloquial, but it's true. So here are some ways that you can spend time together and get to know each other. I'd love you to try these. First activity is what's in your wallet? Just ask everybody. Go around the room, the 3 people, you're eating lunch, whatever the context, and just kind of go, man, we all keep things in our wallet that are sentimental to us. What are those? What do you have in your wallet? So it may sound goofy. I've got my Caribbean license in my wallet. That thing is like a laminated piece of paper. It has no validity or credentialing in the US or Canada for that matter. It is a memory of driving in the Caribbean in crazy roads, potholes, left-hand side of the road. So I was driving backwards, all of it super fun memories, right? A time of growth, a time of adventure, a time of overwhelm because the car didn't have air conditioning. And I remember once having to literally peel off my shirt while my husband was driving to wipe down the windows because things just got so foggy in the humidity and he couldn't see where he was going. Heaven forbid we drive off one of those cliffs. Anyway, what's in your wallet? I did this activity a while ago and it was neat because there was someone there, a leader, who actually had all of their concert pay stubs in their wallet from all the bands that he had been to throughout his teenage years. Turns out this person is like a music fanatic. And I was teasing because his wallet was like 3 inches thick. And I'm like, man, how do you not have a sore low back sitting on that wallet all the time? And it became this like inside joke with everybody. We didn't know the person loved music that much. How many concerts had started this conversation around other concerts people had been to, which ones they liked, which one they'd been to, what city did you see? I saw them too. Man, we started having this connection of in the circle shared experiences, mileage together that fueled some connection and helped us understand each other a little more so that when it comes time to give each other feedback, we have some mileage and we can know that that feedback comes from a good place. Here's another one. What's hanging on your wall? So of course, in a WebEx like this, we're not asking all of you to share your cameras, but when you do get on regular WebEx meetings, ask people about what's in their background. So over my shoulder this way, which it's hard to do this reverse, you see that cloth fabric behind me? It's just a cute piece of craftsmanship from a trip I had in Mexico. Let's talk about what's behind you. So if you're not on WebEx, there are some other strategies. So identify cities you've lived in. What's your favorite, how come? Where have you visited? If you haven't lived in other cities, just what's a fun city that you want to visit or maybe would consider living in? Another one is to create a space for connection, right? All of those examples are just about creating space for connection. So let's keep that in mind, right? Mileage comes through creating a space for connection, whether you're talking about concert stubs, what's in your wallet, what's hanging on the wall behind you, what's the favorite city you'd like to live in, all of those things are connections. So when we have consistent positive interactions with each other, it builds trust because the consistent thing is positive interactions, right? So we want to create a format to just have mileage together, because that mileage creates consistency. The consistency gives us trust. So here's just another image to kind of get at that, right? Consistency comes with trust. We can trust each other when we identify those behaviors that are in the circle, and we recognize when those behaviors happen. So another thing to think about when we talk about building trust is when people feel safe from the trust, they can be innovative. And now is definitely time where we need to be innovative. Like I said with that conference when I started, there is no magic pill, secret answer, best practice as pulling through this pandemic. We're all figuring it out at the same time. We have to be innovative. We need to have that trust and that safety where innovation can show up. So we're only as safe as our most vulnerable team member. We are only as safe as our most vulnerable team member. So think through somebody who's new on your team, right? They really don't know what it takes to be in the circle. Think of someone who's just socially maybe a little different. Those are vulnerable populations, right? I'm an immigrant. You know, when I don't feel like that part of my heritage is recognized, I don't feel in the circle as much. I feel a little vulnerable. So as someone who sees these dynamics, you're all here because you want that innovation and that resilience. What can you do to pull people into the circle that may be outside of the circle because they're feeling vulnerable? They're not feeling in the club. So think through people that maybe aren't invited to have mileage with the group. How can we include them? And sometimes that stuff is as simple as, you know, I'm ordering lunch today, and you ask 3 out of the 4 people in your office what they want on the order, because the 4th person normally brings their lunch. Well, not asking the 4th person just excludes them, and now they're in a vulnerable space. So here are some things that when we talk about safety, psychological safety, that I want to describe. And as I kind of go through these things, do a quick reflection in your head on where you would assess your organization is at. You can even do this with thinking through your own personal family or friendship circles. So in really safe environments, people can ask questions without being stupid. So last night, my husband was saying, you know, Cassie's coming over for dinner tonight. And I said, no, not Cassie, Jessica. And he said, I said Jessica. I said, well, I heard Cassie, Jessie, like sounds kind of the same. I don't feel stupid asking him about that. I feel like I'm asking a clarifying question because it's a safe environment for me, right? So if you're in the meeting and you're asking for clarity, if there's a term that's used that you don't understand, how does it land when somebody asks a question? And behind that, you're really asking yourself, how do I respond also? Like maybe there's some unconscious things that you do that kind of go, I can't believe you don't know that already. We've been here talking about it for 45 minutes, right? People can ask for feedback, right? So when we're done this, I'm definitely going to say to Erin, like, how'd I do? What can I improve on? And that's because I know Erin is going to give me great feedback. Higher level grows people. I'm going to ask her for feedback because I want to grow, not because I'm nervous about looking incompetent. We can be respectfully critical without looking negative, right? So if I point out somebody's behavior that's out of the circle, that's not me being critical. Or rather, that's not me being negative, that's me being respectfully critical. I often say that if we don't give feedback, it's actually disrespectful. So I talked earlier about that team that I was working with recently where this person had kind of exploded with some feedback. She thought that she was being respectful by not pointing out the little issues that were bugging her. She thought that was respectful. Well, it ended up being an explosion, which is really less respectful than had she just said like, hey, it feels like I'm the only one doing this task all week. What's going on? But she put it under the rug. That's not respectful, right? If we have a norm in our circle of growing people, then we're going to respectfully give feedback. And it's not negative, it's helpful because I want to grow you too. And the last idea is safe environments are places where you can be out of the box and it doesn't look disruptive. You can suggest, have we ever thought about doing X without people going, are you kidding? it's good enough how it is. You know, we're not going to change that. You're not being disruptive. It's an environment where we're safe and we can brainstorm, and we're all in the circle on just moving us through this pandemic. What does the new normal look like? So you're in a space where you can ask questions, give feedback, be respectfully critical, and have innovative ideas. So all of those things are ideas that drive safety. So we need to first clarify expectations. That increases safety, right? So what is it to be in the circle, right? If we recognize what it is to be in the circle consistently, that builds trust, and trust, of course, builds safety. And so this cycle starts building on itself, right? We definitely want to put words on what we expect of each other. And so that might be as simple as me saying to Erin, hey, Erin, you know, you came on the call 10 minutes early to make sure I was set up with technology. Thanks. Like, you had my back. That's totally stuff we do in our circle, right? I can give her that feedback, and I can validate in the circle stuff. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be the positive stuff. Like, thanks, Erin, for having my back. You know, this was a new platform. I wasn't quite sure how to share my screen. We played around with things. Thanks, Erin. So you see this orange box, right? Now we're at recognizing behaviors consistently builds trust, and it reinforces what it means to be in the circle. All right, let's talk through some strategies to recognize behaviors. So what we typically say is, thanks for stocking the shelves. Just the quick, like the task, you did it. Erin, thanks for coming on, right? The real bigger impact comes when we say, thanks for stocking the shelves, and then get it why. That makes it better for the next shift, and we are all about having each other's back, right? I can say to Erin, thanks for coming on early to check the technology, and I feel really set up for success and calm going into the WebEx. Thanks. So you want to extend what you normally do by really explaining the why behind how that thing matters. There's a whole magic that comes out of this, right? And that's why I say it doesn't matter if you're a leader or not a leader. Getting at the why really reinforces that behavior. So I recently had the difficult experience of losing my father. It's not fun. And I had breakfast with someone this morning who's a close colleague friend, and he just sat across the table, and his first question was, I want to know, how are you? How are things with your family? When we finished up breakfast, and thankfully it wasn't all talking about my dad, because I did have some tears, I said to him, that was such a nice connection to be able to have a space to talk about that sad spot for me. Thanks for being that colleague. I didn't just say thanks for talking about that, but thanks for giving me a space, because I can just get busy and sort of ignore that I need to go through this grief stuff. So the why gets doing more of the behavior you want. It's really powerful to do that. Okay, second tip. Erin knows we talk about this lots in our leadership development work. So ask great questions. What and how? So if somebody's caught in that spin, right? I see my colleague with the broken furnace and she's off kilter, right? How is your day going today? You seem a little off, right? Looking at pulling them out of their spin with open-ended questions, right? What can I do to support you in this predicament of not having furnace? So really thinking through great questions. Here are some tips. Put a what or a how at the front of a statement. So I might think, gosh, my colleague's really off kilter today. Just put a what in front of it. What has you off kilter today? Right? Erin can ask me, are you good with the technology? Just put a how in front of that. How are you feeling about the technology? So whatever we're thinking in our head about people, just put a what or a how in front of it. Why is a tricky word. As a general statement, we say avoid questions with why. There's a Native American expression that says why has a long tail. I just sort of see it like a whip or something that can just really wrap around you and grab hold. It's just a tricky word. So generally, what or how are great ways to start questions, super high level. So let's look at some of these ability to ask great questions. So in a closed-ended question, are you going to deliver it tomorrow? When are you going to deliver it? So in that first example, it just positions the other person to have the right answer of that. Do you understand? What do you understand? Can you fill out that form? How comfortable do you feel filling out that form? Is everything okay? That's a yes/no question. No. What's working well for you here? Who told you that? How did you find that out? So very subtle shifts. The first column implies some sort of right answer, right? Are you going to deliver it tomorrow? The right answer is yes. Clearly, do you understand? Yes. Can you fill out that form? Of course. There's people sort of give the right answer versus the real answer, and what and how questions get at the real answer. So if you're thinking about it, put a what or a how in front of it. I would love anybody to feel free to chime in some questions or thoughts that you're working through in terms of these open-ended questions. I know that it's something that we know, but also not something we practice a whole lot, right? Because we're caught in that our own spin of the pressure and the go, go, go. So I love this Simon Sinek quote: listening is not understanding the words of the question asked. Listening is understanding why the question was asked in the first place. So you really want to think through what's going on behind this person, right? What's the spin about? What are they spinning on? What has them kind of derailing? And what and how questions get at where are they spinning, right? So we want to get at slowing people down in that spin, helping them identify what's getting in their way of showing up the way we need them to, which is, you got it, in the circle. All right, so I'm gonna just give us a break there and ask some open-ended questions here in the chat. So translate these questions for me. Did you learn something? Huh. A little secret agenda behind this question, right? Give me the open-ended question of, did you learn something? Open up your chat feature and tell me what some open-ended, how I could frame that open-ended. Did you learn something? Of course, the right answer is yes. Somebody chime in an open-ended question of that. The good news about these awkward silences is A, somebody is typing out there to save me. Thank you very much. And B, I'm a seasoned coach. I'm completely comfortable working through that silence. All right, so somebody has said, how will you implement what you learned today? Ah, now we're talking, right? That's a way more sophisticated and mature question versus, did you learn something? Yep, I got it. How will you implement what you learned today? Right, so it assumes that I learned something because you're attending the WebEx. Of course, we expect that you learned something. So I'm not even giving you that like sort of baby question of, did you learn something? You're a professional. I trust you. Of course you learned something. I'm positioning you to be more elevated around how are you going to implement what you learned today. Good. Here's another question. Did you talk to her about it? If I can type. Did you talk to her about it? So we know that in the circle involves us getting in the circle. And I might have a situation where there's some kind of conflict or friction between two people, or somebody comes running to me going, so-and-so, this is what they did. I can't believe they did it. Well, my knee jerk in the spin question might be, did you talk to her about it? What's an open-ended way of getting that to really start slowing people down in the spin? What was the result of your conversation? Good. Which assumes that I'm a professional and I talk to the person, right? Now, I could say, what was the result of your conversation? And maybe the person's like, I didn't talk to her. Okay, well, then you know what you need to do. It's not me kind of bulldozing the conversation and navigating all the small things in that. All right, one more question, and then I want to transition us into some takeaways from today and how you see some of these strategies really working for you. So another one might be, where did you go to find that? This is a closed-ended question because there's one answer. How can I make this one more open-ended? Because I would say I went to the internet on this site. It's obviously not helpful because I'm still struggling with finding something. This is a harder one. I'm stretching us a little bit with this one. So we've really emphasized the what and the how in asking great questions. You can also do show me the steps, right? Slowing them down, getting them to outline some of what they did. Tell me a bit more about where where you're frustrated not finding things. So anything to get the people talking so that you can identify where are they spinning? Like what are they just getting stuck on that's kind of paralyzing some of what they're doing? All right. So I want to talk through what is showing up on the screen right now, which is some of your takeaways from today. So everybody that's on, I would love to know one thing that you're thinking about from today. Maybe it's not something new. Maybe it's just a reminder of something that you've learned. Maybe it's a concept that you kind of want to play around with a little bit more. I would love to hear from people around some kind of takeaway when we think about the role of trust in building innovation and kind of helping us find a way through all of these nebulous things that we're not really sure how to do. You've got some things. I appreciate the WebEx because it does provide an opportunity for lots of people to participate and not that gun shy. I'm not coming on because I have bedhead. In the same breath, I do expect you to have some responses. I know you were engaged with me today. In my circle right now, I'm asking you to chat in something. You got it. Somebody wrote here, we can all do better at being more inclusive. Yes. It's that inclusivity. I mean, sort of diversity and inclusion is such a hot topic right now. And sometimes inclusion is such a big part of diversity and inclusion. You know, just offering to everybody that you're ordering from lunch or putting a piece of paper up on a wall so everyone has access to it without having to go around and ask everybody. But that whole inclusion, like everybody has access to the same information, the same group, the same opportunity to participate, right? I could have a social. The year before COVID hit, we did a great Christmas party, and it wasn't as important that you showed up at the party or not. What was more important is that you had an invite, that you were welcome to the party, right? Everybody welcome. You know, how was that invite shared, et cetera, right? So the important thing is that inclusion, yeah. And sometimes, you know, we're in our own spin as leaders that might get away from us doing some of that inclusion work because we're just trying to get the job done, get the invites out, order the food, finish. And that stuff can be tricky. All right. I know that Erin, I believe that you send out some input from people around the WebExes, so I would love your input around these concepts, and you certainly have some contact information for me. I'll follow up with an email. I would love to stay in contact with you, whether it's just chatting about something that you're ruminating on, or maybe there's an opportunity for me to support your neck of the woods. I sort of say in my specialty that I help adults work together well. And that really does boil down to reducing your stress and frustrations, of course, and building trust so that we can be our best. Because the fact is, it's difficult right now, and anytime we put a group of people together, there's some dynamics in there that can use some massaging. So with that, Erin, I'll turn the mic back over to you.
All right, great, thank you. Great information, Carrie. I know, you know, obviously this training and these concepts go a long way. And if anyone on this call is interested in talking more about Carrie's capabilities, or you have more questions, or you think of things after the call, you know, definitely reach out to me or Carrie, and we'd be happy to answer those for you. You can reach me at hello@higherlevel.com. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. And, you know, some things that we do later on throughout the year, we'll be talking about flexibility in the workplace and more leadership concepts, and talking about hiring and recruiting strategies, because obviously that is our wheelhouse, and we would love all of you to join us. So if you're not on our list currently right now to receive our emails and communications regarding our monthly HiNotes program, also feel free to reach out to me at that email address, and I'll make sure you're added for future reference. We will be sending out the recording of this training as well, so check out your inbox for that in the next 24 hours. And other than that, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. And I don't know about you, but I'm enjoying the sunshine and these warmer temperatures.
What a gift, Erin. Yeah, absolutely. Get out there and enjoy it. Thanks, everybody, for joining. It's great to meet you.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. Have a great day.
Yeah. Bye, Erin.
Bye.